can start with this one, and then Rebecca, if you have anything to say, you can add in. So we've kind of historically had the sites where we've operated. Like many things,
Let me clarify your question. You're asking how students are, how we identify which students get tuition assistance for the BSF funding, or which?
I didn't see the school where I volunteer at on their list. So I'm just wondering, does that mean that school does not or is not able to get funding?
Or how do we choose which schools have preschool?
Correct.
Which schools have preschool? Okay.
so we historically have the sites where we've held preschool classrooms in our elementary buildings in the past. Like many things during COVID, our program shrunk down, and this is kind of our regrowth period. So there are some things we do. We'll send out kind of assessment to see who's interested in our community. Where are our needs not being met? So where are there students that are of preschool age that are not enrolled in other preschool programs? And that's one way we decide where we open up one of our preschool classrooms in our local elementary buildings. We also make sure space, right? Logistics. Is there space in the school, in the elementary building? I know space is of the essence, and so many school buildings do not have open spaces currently to add additional classrooms. But that's something we're always looking at. Our hope is that we would have preschool classrooms in each of our elementary buildings. Our vision is really that it's best for students to start in which the building that they will continue in, right? Be a part of that community from age 3 until they exit the elementary system. So that's our vision, that we will get classrooms at each elementary building, but right now it's kind of our rebuilding stage. And so we were looking at, there's also more boring logistics like transportation and food services and things like that that kind of go into how we choose.
Yeah. Last year we were in 10 buildings, and this year we're back at 12. So we're hoping that each year we're able to grow back until we're in all 18 buildings again.
Information today at Lake Hills Elementary, because that's a beautiful, wonderful school that could use a lot of.
Yeah, Lake Hills is one of the schools that we're in.
I didn't see it on the.
I'll put back our slide where we're at.
Go Lake Hills, that's where I taught most of my career.
And Megan, just to follow up, if there is a student that's going to an elementary school without a preschool site, can they attend a different preschool site that is at a different elementary school?
Yeah, so preschools really is different than elementary. So families can choose whatever preschool site they want. So if a family lives maybe in the Lake Hills area, but they work maybe more in the Ardmore area, they can choose to go to the Ardmore for preschool. So it's different than elementary, where you're really going to that neighborhood school unless you're asking to go to a different area and getting permission to do that from the district.
We also accept out-of-district students and families into the preschool program, since it is not funded exclusively like through the state, so there isn't the tie that you have to live in that attendance area. So we do have some families who currently live outside of the Bellevue School District attendance area.
And those are some of those things with the using all these different funding sources, getting that money from people that are out of the district that supports our need for tuition money and DCYF subsidies, all of those things put together give us that funding to support our program for all students.
Other questions?
Maybe related to the question she had. So we live in the Somerset area, which doesn't have a preschool. And our daughter, who's starting kindergarten there next year, it would be nice if her sibling can go to the same school, so we can just drop off both kids at the same time. But we can, so that so I wasn't sure what to do next year. Was wondering if you guys are going to add preschool program to the Puesta del Sol with the new building, because I know they used to have a preschool program.
Yeah, that's one of our, we were intending to be in the new Puesta building this year, but it wasn't ready. So we're hoping to be there in the fall next year. Yeah.
And something to note for requests. So our request from you is to have a preschool classroom at Somerset. In our application that is posted on our preschool, on the preschool section of the Bellevue School District website, there is a drop down for requests. So is there a school that you would like to see a preschool program? that's not currently listed as one of the offerings. So the more families that were to say, we're interested in Somerset, we're interested in Somerset, that would indicate that then we would want to open up a classroom at Somerset, because we really do believe in that neighborhood community as well. So if there's a need in the Somerset community, then we would like to service those families if possible. But finding the families is sometimes the struggle to know if there's a need.
Get your friends to sign up.
Tell your friends.
Yeah.
Tell the principal too. Like, Megan and I have had a conversation with the principal that we won't name, that we want preschool in your building. We want to be there because there's families that want to be there, and having that places where there isn't necessarily space, like encouraging them that we want to be there.
I think there's definitely
Somerset isn't the school I'm talking about.
yeah, needs in Somerset.
Yeah.
I thought it was because it's the biggest elementary school, so they had to get rid of the preschool program many years ago. But I think there's definitely interest if it's, I don't know, logistically possible.
There's a few schools where there's not a lot of space. I think Somerset's one of them.
Other questions?
Makes me so happy to hear that you have questions.
I wanted to know if everybody who applies to this preschool program is eligible, or is there like a cutoff number? The first 50 applicants get in, and then the space gets filled up. What's the number at?
Yeah, so we take applicants, and then there may be a limit of, so it's, this whole enrollment thing is very complicated. We might have 3 classrooms at one school, and once those fill up, then you might get put on a wait list, but we've got space available at other schools. We might call and say, hey, the school that you chose as your first priority isn't available, but we have space at this other school. Are you interested in that? And then, or we might say, oh, we opened up another classroom. Are you interested in that? Things like that.
Yeah, so in spring, we slate how many classrooms we think we will have at each school building. And then we open enrollment and we see, do those fill or do they not, right? We have returning students, but then we also have a lot of new students and families coming into our program. So if we see, wow, those 3 classrooms filled, or 2 classrooms at Newport Heights filled really quickly, is there space to open a third? Is there a waiting list and space, physical space, in the classroom to open up, or in the school to open up a third classroom? So we always like to give everyone their first choice of where they would like, what community they would like to be a part of for preschool. But sometimes it's that little balance that Rebecca was talking about with numbers. But we will open up more if there is a need.
Like, if there are 2, thank you. So if there are siblings, and there's one who's going to Lake Hills, but for the preschooler, the spot fills up, is there a possibility that they would consider sending the older one to the one where the younger one gets in as well? Let's say it's not in Lake Hills, but there's an opening in Eastgate. Then would they consider opening that enrollment, even though the older one does not live in district?
Like doing a transfer for the older one for Eastgate. I'm not sure. Well, I work really, in the special ed world, I work really closely with student placement, because special education services are something that you get enrolled for, whereas preschool isn't. It's a little bit different. And we're going to be looking at, from an equity perspective, our enrollment process for this next year. That's something that I'll bring up, because I think that would be an interesting thing that could be tied together, and might something that we could consider.
Yeah, something we try to do is remove as many barriers as possible for students and families to be able to have access to the quality education, right? So that I hear is a barrier, right? If you're having to drop off at one school for one student and then a different school for your preschooler, that would definitely be a barrier to be able to have your preschooler in a classroom. So thank you for bringing that up.
I was working with a family recently who had 5 children, and I think 2 of the children were at one school, and then the other 3 were at different schools. And she was telling me about all of her different pickups, and I was like, I'm not sure how you're doing that. So I think we worked together. I worked with her with student placement and got some cohesion going. But I see what you're saying with just 2 children at different schools. So I think that would be something that I could work with student placement to coordinate. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, mine is a clarification of understanding. So you had talked about inclusive classrooms and the curriculum in which you're doing an inclusive classrooms. So my question is, are are all of the classrooms inclusive classrooms, or are there only some classrooms that are inclusive classrooms, and then those classrooms have different curriculum than the classrooms that are not inclusive classrooms? So I don't know if I just
yeah.
didn't understand the
No.
slide, so it's a clarification question.
So all of our classrooms are integrated classrooms. So all of our classrooms could have students with disabilities in them. And we do have classroom, so last one. They could have students with disabilities. We have classrooms that are taught by lead teachers that aren't certificated special education teachers. And then we have classrooms that are taught by teachers who are certificated special education teachers. And those classrooms have a higher percentage of students who have disabilities, who have individualized education plans. The curriculum across our whole program is the creative curriculum. The classrooms that are taught by the certificated special education teachers, those teachers might do more modifications and things like that for the students who have individualized education plans. Anything
That
to add?
answer.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Thank you.
Something we worked really hard for as a program. I know as we've been looking at the preschool programs around the area and across the state, many will just have this is our special education classroom, this is our general education classroom, and this is our classroom for students who receive funding through ECAP, through the state. And it's taken some work on the back end for us to make sure that those students are all learning alongside each other. So that's something that I think is something that makes our program very unique, that it might be a little harder on the adults to make that all work, but we really know it's best for students. So whenever we make a decision, we always think, how is this going to impact students and families? And for this one, we're like, okay, we're willing to put in a little extra work, figure out how to blend all that funding, partially through BSF makes that possible to be able to blend the funding seamlessly, but so we can have student or classrooms that are inclusive and, as Rebecca mentioned earlier, just mimic our community as a whole here in Bellevue.
Yeah. I was on a call yesterday for a preschool champions network, it's called. And I was like, geesh, Bellevue's way ahead of where the other districts in our state are with the way we're including students with disabilities. One of the district that was presenting was talking about the way they were including students with disabilities, and it was a special education teacher was teaching the class, but there weren't that many typically developing children in the class. I think there were like 3 kids without disabilities and then like maybe 9 kids with disabilities, and that isn't necessarily an inclusive environment where our classes are 50% students without disabilities and 50% students with disabilities. So our classes are really beautifully inclusive classrooms, and our students are really getting a rich experience through the work that our teachers are doing and the support that we're getting from BSF and other supports. It's really cool.
Go ahead.
Can I beat you to it, Michael? I feel like that highlights, again, now I'm like, oh, things that for next time we'll put in this presentation. But I think that's also something that really makes our program unique. And I know this from being a mother myself and looking at programs for my daughter up where we live. But there aren't many preschool programs that have teachers who are certificated teachers. So for example, just as a K-12 teacher would go through a teacher certificate program, many of our preschool teachers in our program have that same certification, which it isn't common if you look through other early learning programs in the area.
Other questions? Go here and then here.
I was wondering about, from the principal's perspective, did they need extra training from you? It's a whole different ballgame from, right, K through 5 maybe. So I was wondering if the preschool teachers have extra training or administrative support, or what that looks like.
I come to this with the context that I was a kindergarten teacher for many years at Lake Hills and Clyde Hill. So when I walk into our preschool classrooms, to me, these classrooms look the same as kindergarten. From the quality education and teaching standpoint, it's the same. What is great quality teaching in preschool is the same thing that is great quality teaching in our K-5 classroom. So when our principals go in, we say, look for those great indicators of learning and teaching experiences with our staff. The thing that I'm learning, being new to early learning, and due to being preschool, there are all sorts of licensing requirements. So bells on the door, when you have to time things and write things down and document things. That's very different than our kind of K-5 classroom. So that's something we've been partnering with principals to kind of educate them on those kind of little licensing requirements that they need to be aware of when working more closely with our preschool program. Is there something you wanted to add, Rebecca?
Having been a head of school that had a pre-K program, it was hard to wrap my mind around what was happening in pre-K because of all the state licensing requirements. So having people who are there who know what they're doing is really important, but it's helpful for the head of the school to know what's going on there too. So there's definitely a lot, and that's where I really do feel like experts in early learning are worth their weight in gold. So.
And
Yeah.
we've got some really amazing administrators like Brenda Arroyo, who's the principal at Ardmore. She was an early learning teacher. So we've got some people who we really lean on and highlight when we're doing principal trainings and things like that.
And as far as training for our teachers in our early learning program for the first time this year across the board have Wednesday afternoons without students. So that wasn't common in the past. So where the students that you're familiar with that are in our K-12 program, they have that shorter day on Wednesday to allow time for planning, professional development, communicating with families. In the past, our early learning program teachers did not receive that time away. We had students with them the entire school day. So starting this year, all of our lead teachers have Wednesday afternoons, and they've been meeting as a PLC, so a professional learning community with other teachers. They go to professional development hosted by the general district or by our department. They have time to meet with families on Wednesday afternoons. So they have all of these licensing requirements and these different requirements around their job, but they're getting more time now than they have before to complete those.
Great.
So I know from K to 5 there are at least 4 specialties every week. So does preschool they have the same library and art and different specialty coming to the classroom or go to different classroom?
Yeah, not yet. I hope that someday we'll have universal preschool, and that'll be something that's offered as part of the preschool day. But that's not something that we're able to offer right now.
It's happening inconsistently,
Yeah.
and it's on a volunteer teacher basis at the schools that are doing it. Again, this is all linked to funding, state funding, right? So because the specialist teachers are being funded through the state, and that's only meant for K-5 or K-12.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
We do. One thing I didn't mention in the presentation was that we got a grant from the state to do an inclusive transitional K class, which is essentially state funded, using state funds for kindergarten to have preschool for kids who are 4 for a year of preschool. That's using that money. And so we're going to have a transitional K class starting at some point this year and trying that out. And hopefully we'll be able to grow that, and that'll offer us another funding source to add to our list here, another offering and way to have preschool for kids. And those students will actually get the 4 specialists a week. And we'll start with 1 class this year. Hopefully the next year have more classes, and then keep offering more for our community. And that'll be a completely free tuition free offering for kids in our community. I'm really excited about that.
I think we have time for one more question, if anyone else has one.
Hi, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old went to the Jume preschool last year and really enjoyed it. So my question is, my 3-year-old is in a private preschool program. And you did mention that being inclusivity is kind of a key differentiator of your program. I was curious if you are aware of any research or study out there that says that children who are immersed in an inclusive environment early on in their education contribute to their overall happiness or well-being or their success when they become adults.
There's lots of research that shows that inclusive environments are better for all children, and it leads to less absenteeism and higher social emotional like outcomes.